decided to take charge. It was a cold winter morning when destiny had its whimsical way with me. I was at Cafe Serendipity, a snug little cafe tucked between towering office buildings and boutique stores. The place was a hidden gem, mostly because it wasn't just about coffee. It was about the people, the conversations, and the atmosphere. Cozy wooden tables, jazz playing softly in the background, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the aroma of baked goods. It felt like stepping into a different world, one where time slowed down just enough for you to breathe. That's when I saw him for the first time, Jack. He was wearing a tailored gray suit that perfectly complemented his dark hair and blue eyes. He looked sophisticated, yet approachable, the kind of man who read the Wall Street Journal and comic books with equal enthusiasm. He was staring intently at his laptop, a frown etched on his face, but the moment our eyes met, the frown melted into a warm, inviting smile. A smile I would come to know and love, a smile that would be my comfort and my undoing. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, pointing to the empty chair across from me. "No, not at all. Please, have a seat," I replied, trying to seem casual despite the butterflies performing gymnastics in my stomach. As he sat down, he closed his laptop and gave me his full attention, a rarity in this digital age. "I'm Jack," he said, extending his hand. "Caroline," I replied, shaking his hand. There was an undeniable spark, a current that flowed through that simple touch, a promise of things to come. We began talking as if we were long-lost friends, rather than strangers. We spoke about everything, from the latest movies to our deepest aspirations. What struck me most was how in tune we were with each other. When I spoke about my dreams of becoming a writer, he didn't just nod along. He shared his own dreams of starting a business, of creating something meaningful. "So, you're a dreamer?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with interest. "Guilty as charged," I laughed. "But isn't everyone?" "Some people are too scared to dream," he said, his eyes suddenly taking on a serious look. "They think they'll wake up to disappointment, but not dreaming at all. That's the real tragedy." I looked into his eyes and knew right then, this was the man I was going to marry. I could see our future, not in the lines of his palms, but in the depths of his eyes. I saw a lifetime of laughter and love, of shared dreams and, yes, even shared sorrows. Little did I know then how our story would unfold. The ups and downs, the love and loss, and choices that would come to define us. That day, as we sat sipping our coffees, lost in each other, I had no idea that I was about to embark on a journey that would bring me my greatest joys and my most profound heartaches. We wrapped up our impromptu coffee date with a promise to see each other again. As I watched him walk away, I felt a strange mix of elation and anticipation, like a book you can't put down, a story you can't wait to unfold. But stories are funny things. They have their own logic, their own timelines. And no matter how carefully you read, you can never quite predict the ending. As I sat there, thinking about the incredible man I had just met, I couldn't have imagined the twists and turns our life would take. But even if I could have seen it all, the good and the bad, I would have chosen him again and again. Because sometimes love isn't about happy endings. It's about the story you write along the way. And our story, for better or for worse, was just beginning. That winter morning at Cafe Serendipity wasn't just another day. It was the prologue to the rest of my life. It was beautiful, it was magical, and it was irrevocably flawed. Just like us, just like everyone. And yet, I wouldn't have had it any other way. And so began the tale of Caroline and Jack, a tale of dreams, love, and unforeseen complications. A tale that was mine to tell and mine to live, a tale that was far from over. Its pages yet to be written, its ending yet to be known. Life often has its own plans, disregarding our neatly crafted visions of the future. 2 years into our marriage, my father, Thomas, passed away. He was a steadfast man, full of integrity and wisdom, a true cornerstone in my life. His death felt like a personal earthquake, shaking the very foundation of my existence. I was in my office when I got the call. It was my mother's voice on the other end, shaky and subdued. "Caroline, your father. He's gone. It was a heart attack. I think you should come home." My heart plummeted into my stomach. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. My eyes filled with tears, and my vision blurred. I don't remember hanging up the phone, or even how I got home. I was on autopilot, every action a blurred sequence, every thought consumed by a terrible void. When I walked into my parents' home, It felt empty despite being filled with people. Relatives, friends, neighbors, all offering condolences, their words forming a sort of melancholic background noise. Amidst the sea of grieving faces, I saw Jack, his eyes filled with concern and love. He wrapped his arms around me, but the warmth I usually felt was overshadowed by the chill of loss that enveloped me. The funeral was a solemn affair. A misty mourning seemed to mirror our collective sorrow. Jack was by my side throughout, offering silent support. I stood beside my mother as we lowered Daddy into the earth, my heart sinking with each clump of dirt that hit the coffin. In the weeks that followed, I found myself sorting through my father's affairs. Amid the fog of grief, a lawyer informed me of my inheritance, a sum of $5 million, a financial legacy my father had left behind for me. "Your father was a wise investor, Caroline," the lawyer said, handing over the documents. "He wanted to make sure you were taken care of." I looked at the papers and then at Jack, who was seated next to me. An idea formed in my mind, a way to honor my father and surprise Jack at the same time. I made a decision then, one that was meant to bring joy, but ultimately complicated things in ways I couldn't foresee. "I'd like to keep this a secret for now," I whispered to Jack as we left the lawyer's office. "I have something special in mind, a surprise." Jack looked at me, a bit puzzled but trusting. "All right, if you think it's best. You know I'm here to support whatever you want to do." "I know, and I love you for it," I replied, squeezing his hand. The $5 million felt like both a blessing and a burden. A blessing because it offered financial security, and a burden because no amount of money could fill the void left by my father's absence. Still, I believed I could use it to create something beautiful, a dream home for Jack and me, a sanctuary where we could make new memories, a place where we could start a family. With Jack still in the dark, I began the process. I consulted architects, visited properties, and even began initial negotiations, all under a veil of secrecy. My excitement grew with each passing day. I couldn't wait to see the look on Jack's face when I finally revealed the surprise. But as they say, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. My grand surprise, our dream home, would remain a blueprint, an aspiration that was never realized. For unbeknownst to me, while I was planning our future, an invisible rift was forming between us, a rift that would soon turn into a chasm too wide to bridge. A fight ensued, one so severe that it unraveled the fabric of our marriage. It was one of those arguments that started small but snowballed into something larger, touching raw nerves and exposing hidden resentments. And just like that, our story took a dark turn, leading us away from the dream home I had secretly been planning and into uncharted, rocky terrain. And so my plans were shelved, my dreams put on hold. But I held on to hope, believing that love would conquer all, that we could still find our way back to each other. A hope that, as time would tell, was both my solace and my delusion. The fight was unlike any we had ever had, not just a disagreement, but a cataclysmic clash that seemed to open up fissures in the foundation of our relationship. We were both stressed, both burdened by the pressures of work and life. But instead of leaning on each other, we imploded. "You never listen to me, Caroline! It's always about what you want!" Jack yelled, his face flushed with emotion. "Listen to you! What about me, Jack? You're so absorbed in your own world that you don't even notice me anymore." I shot back, feeling my own anger boil over. And then he said the words, the ones that broke not just the evening, but us. "Maybe we're better off apart, at least for a while." The room went silent, and I could hear my own heart pounding in my ears. "Is that what you want? A separation?" My voice trembled as I spoke the words, as if giving them life would also breathe reality into this nightmare scenario. "I think it's for the best. We need time to think, to reassess," he said, looking away, unable to meet my eyes. And just like that, Jack moved out. Our home suddenly felt emptier, like a body missing a vital organ, still functioning but irrevocably impaired. I was devastated. I had lost my father, and now it seemed I was losing my husband. I spent the next 2 years in a daze, vacillating between hope and despair. I sought advice from friends, consulted relationship experts, and even went into therapy. I did everything I could to save my marriage, but Jack remained distant. "Please, Jack, let's try again. We can go to couples therapy." "Carolyn, I've moved on. I suggest you do the same," was his cold reply. I couldn't believe this was the man I had married, the man who once looked at me as if I were his entire world. Now, I was just a chapter in his past, one he seemed all too eager to close. Every ignored call, every unread message was like a dagger in my heart. I felt discarded, irrelevant. And the inheritance, the $5 million that was supposed to be a happy surprise. It became a taunting reminder of happier times, of dreams unfulfilled. I felt like I was sinking, my emotional buoyancy depleted. But as I hit rock bottom, something within me stirred. A resilience I didn't know I had, a refusal to be subsumed by tragedy. So I decided to take charge of my destiny. If life was handing me lemons, then I was going to make the most extravagant lemonade. I started to consider investing the money, not just as a way to grow the inheritance, but as a means to rebuild my life. My thoughts turned to my long-shelved dream of starting a business. But little did I know that my newfound sense of purpose would soon be threatened by the very man who had driven me to this point. Just when I thought I was turning a new page, life threw another curveball, a curveball named Jack. It's ironic how life's twists and turns can be both cruel and enlightening. In losing my marriage, I was about to find something equally valuable, a sense of self, a realization that my worth was not tied to any relationship. However, this newfound wisdom would come at a cost, a final ordeal that would serve as the ultimate test of my resilience. There's something incredibly liberating about hitting rock bottom. Once you're there, the only direction left is up. Fueled by a newfound sense of determination, I set out to reclaim my life. It was time to pour my energy into something that would not only give me a sense of purpose, but also serve as a tribute to my father's entrepreneurial spirit. Consulting with financial advisors and business mentors, I decided to start my own company. As I went through the process, filing the paperwork, scouting locations, hiring employees, I felt more alive than I had in years. The company was a boutique marketing firm. In a strange twist of fate, it took off faster than I could have ever hoped for. Maybe it was luck, maybe timing, or maybe it was the endless hours I poured into it. Regardless, the success was beyond my wildest dreams. "Looks like you've got a real knack for this, Caroline," my business partner, Emily, said to me one evening as we looked over our impressive quarterly reports. "I had a great teacher," I replied, thinking of my father. "He taught me the value of hard work and smart investments." Soon, I had enough income to buy myself a beautiful house. A different one than I'd planned on sharing with Jack, but a dream home nonetheless. I also bought a new car, the kind I'd always dreamed of driving but never thought I'd actually own. "I can't believe this is mine," I said to the real estate agent as I toured my new home. "Believe it, Caroline. You've earned it," she replied, handing me the keys. For the first time in a long time, I was genuinely excited about the future. I even began dating again, meeting new people who reminded me that I was desirable, that I was more than just someone's estranged wife. Life was good. Not perfect, but it was my life, sculpted by my choices, my risks, and my hard work. It wasn't long before whispers about my newfound success began to circulate. At social events, I'd catch glimpses of acquaintances looking at me differently, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with envy. The rumors magnified my financial success, and I could feel the narrative of my life shifting in the eyes of others. And then, one fateful evening, there was a knock at the door of my beautiful new home. Opening it, I came face to face with a ghost from my past, Jack. He looked different, a bit older, a bit worn, but unmistakably him. "I heard you've been doing well, Caroline," he said, his eyes scanning the visible opulence behind me. "Well enough," I responded cautiously. "I think it's time we talk about the division of assets," he said, getting straight to the point. "I was thinking you could give me $1 million. That should settle it." My heart sank, but only for a moment. $1 million! Was that all I was worth to him now? A sum of money. The audacity of his request angered me, but it also fortified my resolve. I looked at him, not with the love that once filled my eyes, but with a newfound clarity. "If that's what you're here for, then you're wasting your time," I said, my voice laced with a finality that surprised even me. It was a pivotal moment, a crossroads where my past and my present intersected. As I closed the door on Jack, both literally and metaphorically, I felt the final remnants of my old life slip away, making room for the new life I had built. I was no longer just Caroline, the heartbroken wife. I was Caroline, the successful businesswoman, the homeowner, the survivor. But life had one more twist in store for me, a final act in this tumultuous drama. Little did I know that my resolve would soon be tested in a way I never anticipated. in a place I never expected, a courtroom. After that uncomfortable encounter with Jack, I found myself pondering the complexities of human behavior, how someone you once shared your life with could turn into a complete stranger. As I was buried in my thoughts, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a lawyer, signaling the opening salvo of what would soon become a legal battle. Jack was filing for divorce, and not just that. He was also claiming half of my assets, half of my hard-earned success. The audacity of his actions left me flabbergasted, but I wasn't about to roll over and let him take what I had built. "Do you think he has a case?" I asked my lawyer, Andre, as we prepared for the court proceedings. "Marital laws can be complex, but in this case, you have a strong point in your favor. Your company and assets were acquired after the separation. He doesn't have a clear-cut claim to it," she assured me. That did little to ease my anxieties as the day of the court hearing approached. The courtroom was cold, impersonal, a sharp contrast to the warm vision of home I had once planned to create with Jack. As I sat there, waiting for the judge to arrive, Jack caught my eye. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I had fallen in love with. But it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by a hardened exterior. "May I remind you of my offer? $1 million and we can put this all behind us," Jack whispered, leaning towards me as our lawyers shuffled papers. "My counteroffer is this," I whispered back. "Go ahead and try to claim my hard work. You'll see just how strong I've become." When the proceedings started, it felt surreal. Here we were, two people who had once promised to share a lifetime, now itemizing that life like a ledger of debits and credits. His lawyer argued that my success was built on the life we had shared, that he had a right to the assets. My client gave up many opportunities to support the defendant in her pursuits. "It's only fair that he partakes in the fruits of those sacrifices," his lawyer argued. "Your Honor, all the assets in question were acquired after my client and her husband separated," Andrea countered. "Moreover, they are all registered under her company's name. My client is technically an employee of her own corporation." The judge looked from Andrea to Jack's lawyer, then back to his files. "Given that the assets were accumulated after the separation and are owned by the corporation, I rule in favor of the defendant," he announced finally. As the judge's gavel fell, so did the weight that had been pressing on me. I looked at Jack, whose face had turned a shade paler. I felt a strange mix of victory and sadness. Sadness because it had come to this. Victory because I had stood up for myself and won. As we filed out of the courtroom, Andre patted my back. "You did well, Caroline. He had no right to your success." "Thank you, Andre. It's finally over, isn't it?" "It's over, but it's also a new beginning," she said, smiling. As I walked out into the sunlight, papers in hand, I felt like a massive chapter of my life had finally come to a close. But more importantly, a new chapter was about to begin. A chapter where I was the author of my own destiny, the master of my own fate. I had weathered the storm, and I was stronger for it. And as I sat in my car, taking a moment to absorb it all, I found myself laughing, a deep, liberating laugh that echoed through the empty car. The whole ordeal, from the euphoria of love to the depths of heartbreak, and now to this moment of triumph, felt almost Shakespearean in its drama. But as I drove away, I knew that my story was far from a tragedy. It was a story of resilience, of reclaiming my life and finding my strength. It was, for lack of a better term, a rebirth. And while I didn't know what adventures lay ahead, one thing was for sure: I was ready to face them head, on with a heart full of hope and a spirit unbreakable. The courtroom was an arena I had never expected to step foot in, at least not like this. The stark, sterile atmosphere was a world apart from the vibrant life I had been building. As I walked in, each step seemed to echo with a gravitas reverberating off the walls, announcing the gravity of the moment. Andre, my lawyer, seemed unflappable as ever, her briefcase in one hand and a reassuring smile on her face. "Ready?" she asked, looking at me. "As I'll ever be," I replied, trying to muster a smile. We took our seats, me at the defendant's table, staring across the room at Jack and his lawyer. Andre had prepped me well. I knew what to expect, and yet nothing could truly prepare you for the moment your personal life is laid bare, picked apart, and dissected like a lab specimen. The judge walked in, a stern-looking man with graying hair and glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. "All rise," the bailiff announced, and we all stood in respect until he took his seat. "Case number 4237, Jack Harrison vs. Caroline Harrison. We are here to settle matters related to division of assets and finalization of divorce proceedings," he began, flipping through the papers before him. Jack's lawyer was the first to speak, portraying Jack as the victim, the forsaken husband entitled to what I had earned. Your Honor, my client has been patient. He has been forgiving. He supported Mrs. Harrison when she was nobody, and now that she has found success, she chooses to abandon him, keep all the assets for herself. Andrea was next, calm and collected. Your Honor, the assets in question were all acquired post-separation. My client, Mrs. Harrison, is the sole proprietor of her business, a business she started after the separation. Mr. Harrison has no legal claim to them. But your client has used marital funds to set up her business, Jack's lawyer interjected. That's incorrect, Andre retorted. Mrs. Harrison used her inheritance to set up her business, an inheritance she received from her late father. The atmosphere was thick with tension. You could almost feel it physically. It was then that the judge asked me to speak. Mrs. Harrison, would you like to add something? He questioned, looking at me over his glasses. Taking a deep breath, I stood up. Your Honor, I loved my husband. I supported him as he did me, but when I needed him the most, he chose to walk away. I built my life from scratch with no help from him. What I have now is mine, built through my blood, sweat, and tears. The judge nodded, taking notes. He seemed to consider all that had been said before making his final judgment. After reviewing the facts and listening to both parties, it's clear that Mrs. Harrison acquired her assets independently, after the separation. Therefore, Mr. Harrison has no legal claim to them. His gavel came down with a finality that resounded far beyond that room. The tension dissipated, replaced by a wave of relief that washed over me. I looked at Jack, his face distorted in disbelief and disappointment. As we exited the courtroom, Andre turned to me. You held your own, Caroline. How do you feel? Like a weight has been lifted, I said, my voice tinged with disbelief and relief. Is it really over? Andre smiled. Yes, Caroline, it's over. As I walked out, my heels clicking against the tiled floor, I couldn't help but feel an immense sense of liberation. The courtroom doors closed behind me, but ahead lay endless open roads. I had fought for my life and won, and no one could take that away from me. This was my victory, my life, my story to write, and write it I would, with newfound passion and an unbreakable spirit. The weeks following the courtroom drama were a whirlwind. The media had caught wind of the trial, and though I wasn't thrilled about my personal life being public fodder, I was pleased to see the narrative overwhelmingly in my favor. Women's empowerment blogs celebrated my victory, entrepreneurs invited me to speak about resilience, and I even landed a cover story in a reputable business magazine. It was ironic that Jack's attempt to take half of my hard-earned fortune had, in some strange way, catapulted me into the limelight as a figure of strength and independence. You're a sensation now, Andre chuckled as we met for coffee. He's given you the best prayer you could ever have. Isn't it poetic? In trying to bring me down, he's only raised me higher, I mused, savoring the delicious irony of it all. My company was doing better than ever, and the home I had purchased felt like a sanctuary, filled with peace and solitude. One fine day, as I was lounging on my patio, enjoying the serenity and reflecting on how far I'd come, I heard a knock on my door. My heart dropped for a moment. Could it be? But when I opened the door, it was only a delivery guy holding an oversized package. Caroline Harrison, he asked. That's me, I confirmed, curious about this unexpected parcel. As I opened it, I couldn't contain my laughter. It was an exquisite painting I had once admired during a European trip Jack and I had taken early in our marriage. He had always promised to buy it for me, but never did. Now here it was, with a note attached. Consider this a late wedding gift. All the best, Jay. Was it guilt? An attempt at closure? Whatever it was, I found it amusing. In one final bizarre act he had chosen to give after trying so hard to take from me, I invited Andre over that evening to share a bottle of wine and admire the painting. Do you think he's regretting it now? She asked, examining the artwork. Regret is a complex emotion, I mused, swirling the wine in my glass, but if he does feel it, it's too little, too late. As the sun set, casting its warm golden glow over the room, we toasted. To new beginnings, to the lessons learned, and the promising journey ahead. The painting, a vivid tapestry of colors, now adorned my wall, a poignant reminder of my past. But unlike the past, it didn't haunt me. It only added to the richness of my present. I had the last laugh, quite literally. The ordeal had taught me more about my own strength than any other experience ever could. I felt invincible, capable of taking on any challenge life would throw my way. If Jack had re-entered my life to test that strength, he had certainly accomplished that.